So I'm the founder and president of awake.net, which is a nonprofit social impact corporation for the entheogenic community. It's a platform where our focus is on the FEAT program, which is a fund for entheogenic addiction treatment. And our mission is to end opioid addiction. But our other mission is to communicate about the spiritual dimension of the entheogenic experience, which is why I choose to use the word entheogen to talk about it. So, so my account, I want to share my account of an experience that I had. I call it Crisis as Crucible. And it happened when I was 33 years old. I had a profound awakening experience that was precipitated by an existential crisis. It led me to understand that there's an opportunity in every crisis or wound for awakening. And the crisis is almost a necessary part of the process of awakening. So I was married and I had a 3-year-old son, a mortgage, and a thriving design business in Chicago. I was doing everything that we call success, but I wasn't happy. I didn't even know that I wasn't happy. I just had a vague feeling that something was amiss and a feeling of disappointment in life. Like, is this all there is? Is this it? And then one day I went to pick up my three-year-old son from daycare, and I was talking to Ramona, his teacher, and I felt as though my mask was slipping. And it was a very distinct, palpable feeling, you know, like as though I had a wig on that was falling off, but I didn't have any hands to take to adjust it. And I felt as though I was sort of interacting with this person on the surface, and there was something behind me, behind that surface, that was looking at myself interacting and saying, there's something wrong with this picture. So I didn't really know what to do about it. But a few days later, I was talking to a friend from college who had come to visit me, and we were on a walk, and I was telling her about something, and I suddenly burst into tears, and I was in so much anguish that I had to sit down on the curb. I was sobbing my heart out. And that's when I realized there was something really wrong, and that I was not in touch with my emotions or my feelings, and I needed to find out what was going on. So I didn't really know what to do. I was a very ordinary person, conservative, South Indian conservative person. And someone told me I should go see a psychic. Her name was Sonia, and they said she was really good. So I decided to go. I went to see her. And she told me that I needed to learn about the right use of will. Now, I want to touch upon something Jerry said about how this process seems almost magical. And I think this is true. You know, when you step into the synchronicity of transformation, it is magical. Things happen, things connect with you, and it doesn't really make logical linear sense at all. And it makes you wonder about the intelligence of the universe. So she said I should read some books by an author named Stuart Wilde. So I didn't think much of her reading at all, and I just went on with my life. But a week later, I was in a bookstore and I saw a shelf of books by this guy named Stuart Wilde. So I pulled out one of those books, and you know, they were like, can you see this? They were like these kind of cheesy books. I would never buy something like this myself, with like 14-point type. I'm a graphic designer, so I just wouldn't have bought that book, but I picked it up. And it was a book called The Force. And he was talking about this God force that was bigger than anything that we can imagine, and that it was inside of us. And it was also outside of us. And it was this beneficent force, or intelligence, if you will. I was electrified by what he said, because I had had a dream when I was in graduate school, which was about this force. I woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning with this kind of certainty that there was something bigger than us, some intelligence greater than us, not human. So anyway, I decided to go to a workshop that he was offering in Taos, New Mexico, called Warrior's Wisdom. And now you have to understand, I was not a New Age person at all, and I had never been to a workshop like this. I lived in Chicago, so going to Taos was a big difference. And what happened was that about a day before the workshop, before my flight, my mind sort of became silent, and it was like something in me was preparing for something to happen. And I was telling myself, I'm off to see the wizard. So I went to the workshop, and the silence grew bigger and bigger over the 3 days of the workshop. And as my mind stopped, it wasn't like there wasn't any thinking. I was thinking, but it wasn't this constant stream of thoughts, just that we live in our everyday consciousness. And I was able to feel things and intuit things and know things, and I was listening much better. So Stuart Wilde was a genius, and I'm really grateful to him for liberating me. He used a combination of tools to break down my there were 800 people in this room, ordinary habitual patterns, and make space for something new. He did this by a combination of metaphysical talks, perceptual reframes, alkaline diet, and waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning to do a theta metronome meditation. So he was breaking up the habits. And by breaking up those habits, he kind of, in retrospect, what I believe happened is that he sort of took away the ego's defenses and habitual rhythms. And in that space, in that gap, he talked about this gap a lot, something else, there was room for something else to happen. So he also had a series of ropes courses where you had to climb up things and ring bells, and it challenged your physical strength and fear, challenged your fears and your sense of balance and all kinds of things. So his name was Stuart Wilde. He's passed away, Stuart Wilde. So anyway, I had done 3 of these ropes challenges that morning, and I came to the 4th one, and I felt a profound indifference about doing it. And I told them, well, I'm going to skip this one because I've already done 3. I've challenged myself so many ways. I don't need to do it anymore. And so the facilitator said to me, well, maybe you should do it. Maybe you're resisting for a reason. And I was really irritated that it was all this new age mumbo jumbo. So I said, okay, I'll do it just to show you that I'm not resistant. So I went to do it, and you had to put yourself on belay and climb up this tree 70 feet up. And there was a tightrope that you had to walk down. There was also a rope on top, and you hooked yourself to the rope on top with a pulley, so that you had the support of the rope on top, and you could propel yourself forward. And the task was to go to the other end, ring a bell, and then come down. And if you fell along the way, there was a net and a belay, so there was really no danger here. So I had gone about 5 feet into the rope with the pulley, and suddenly the pulley got stuck. I couldn't move forward, I couldn't move backwards. And I was standing there for what seemed like an eternity. My arms were aching. I didn't know what to do. And then this voice came from below, where people were standing around watching me. My friend Jim said, Lakshmi, let go. You can do it. And I realized at that moment that that was really my only option, was to let go. So I slowly let go of the pulley, and I slowly turned around on this tightrope, and my arms were akimbo. And for a split second, I was standing on this tightrope without any support. And I could hear the cameras clicking down there, and I sort of felt like a goddess for a second. and then I fell. And as I fell, it was like my life just rushed past me, and I saw that this rope thing was a hologram of meaning, that it was basically a hologram for what I did in my life, that I tended to hold on to things long after they had ceased to support me. So it was like that was my near death experience. I fell and I understood this, all this about my life, and I knew that I had to make some radical changes. So the next day after that, we had a firewalk, and that was the last thing that happened in this workshop. And I don't know how many of you, if any of you have done a firewalk, but a firewalk is like a collective trance, and it's a group that is sort of holding the belief that they can walk through these coals and not get burnt, and it works. And so when you do it, but it's a non-ordinary state, and that's what he brought us to this non-ordinary state. And we did the firewalk, and after that, it's very empowering, because you really have broken through a belief system that we collectively hold, that fire burns. And I felt this ecstatic energy running through me, and it was like blue electric, and I could see it in this weird way, and I could see how it connected me with everything else, and it was ecstatic. And I also had this silence going on, and I was just on cloud nine. And I went home, and the piece of the equation that was me had completely changed. It was like I had died and I was born again. And so the elements of my life that were dissonant, they had to change. So I went through massive change. But for 3 weeks, I was in an ecstatic state. And even though all this supposedly terrible stuff was going on, like I was getting divorced, I was ending a business relationship, I felt ecstatic. And I realized that there is this energy, this ecstatic energy in us that is independent of circumstance, and that you can, that you can actually inhabit that state of consciousness. In fact, not only can you inhabit it, I felt that it's our birthright, but that we have somehow lost connection to it. So what happened after 3 weeks was I fell into what I would call the void. And Stuart Wilde had warned us about this, and he said, um, it's like you're in this, even when you do entheogens, you're in this borrowed state. It's chemically induced, or you're borrowing the high energy of somebody else. You're oscillating with them. It's like when you feel inspired talking to somebody who is really amazing at what they're sharing, or what they're saying is really empowering. You feel that for a bit, but if you want to own it, you have to work on yourself. And I still wanted that state again, because once you've had a taste of it, you want to live there. That I started to work on myself, and I did all these various things. I did hypnotherapy, meditation, crystal cleansing, crystal bed cleansing, massage, akashic readings, emotional healing things. I did a whole bunch of things to help myself move through what I would call the dissonances of my personality. That was like, and I'm still doing that. It's a lifelong process. So this awakening is a lifelong process, because but what really helped me about the thing that happened with Stuart Wilde and the ecstasy is that I understood that that feeling belongs to us. It's not just something that is created by taking MDMA. Now, years later, when I did MDMA, I understood that it was the exact same thing that I had experienced, except when I experienced it in the natural state, I had no pain in my jaws, or a reaction the next day, because it was natural. So years later, in 1997, ayahuasca came into my life. I had a few weeks to myself. I was a single mom. My son was at Disney World with his dad, so I decided to go to Machu Picchu and Iquitos to see the rainforest. I didn't know anything about ayahuasca. I went by myself. I had no Spanish. Call me crazy. But um, I had this trip booked with a tourist agent, where I would go to a jungle lodge, and then I would go to on a riverboat trip, and then I would go to Machu Picchu. So when I got there, I realized that I didn't want to go on the riverboat trip because it was, a bunch of martini sipping tourists. So I canceled that. And suddenly there was a gap in my itinerary. And it was during that gap that ayahuasca came into my life. I was sitting in a cafe, and I had a book called The Mists of Avalon that I was reading. And the waiter who was walking by saw the title, Miss, and he thought it said mystic. So he came over to me and he said, "So you like it, the mystic?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't know what he was talking about. So he went over to this white guy sitting a couple tables away named Alan Shoemaker. He got up, came over to my table and sat down across from me and said, "So I hear you want to do ayahuasca." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "It's a medicine plant that gives you visions." Now, had he said psychedelic, I might not have had anything to do with it. But I said, "Well, I don't need a medicine plant to have visions." I was having a lot of visions at the time. So, he just took me around the market and I saw different things. And finally, I felt like ayahuasca had come into my life in such a strange way that I needed to pay attention to it. So I decided to do the journey. He took me to this little hut in a slum. This was a long time before what ayahuasca is now in Peru. And it was a crude bench, mud hut with pigs underneath, and I drank this brew. And as soon as it came on, I was back in that ecstatic state that I had felt before. And I felt so familiar and so good to be there. And what happened to me during that ayahuasca journey is that my father, who had died 6 years before, and whom I had not seen because he died in India, and by the time I got there, there was really nothing to see. I didn't get to say goodbye to him, came to me in a ayahuasca vision. And it was like a galaxy and his head, just his head like Spock in a galaxy. But it was definitely him. I could feel the energy and I could feel this immense love. And in an instant, any resentment or pain or grief I had about not seeing him before his death just vanished, just vanished. We just knew that we were connected forever. And this kind of river of love between us and eternal connection. And he said two things to me that one of them was, "I'm going away now to another planet, and we probably won't see each other for millennia." That was the first thing. And that was it. That was what he said to me, one sentence. And what I got from it was two things. One, that, and because it was my father, I believed him. One was that the possibility that we live beyond this life, we live on other planets, and we live for millennia. These were the three ideas that he gave to me. And a lot of it has been reinforced over the years by doing other entheogenic journeys. And I've come to believe that, yes, we do reincarnate. Yes, we do have a life beyond this body. And it's very comforting to know that you live beyond this body, because then suddenly every decision you make isn't so vital and damning or imperative that you succeed. You relax about living life. Anyway, that's my awakening story. Thank you very much.